Hello and welcome to iBuzz. I'm your host Nosheen Bukhari, bringing you the most exciting and latest news from showbiz world. In today's episode, we will discuss Lady Diana refusing the offer of interview from Oprah Winfrey, followed by a movie review on fatherhood. First things first, let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. Courtney Love calls out Olivia Rodrigo photo similarity to Holt album cover. Samuel L. Jackson's been acting for nearly 50 years. Now he's finally getting an Oscar. Diana rejected Oprah Winfrey's request, saying she was only after sensationalism. Ed Sheeran drops plans to collaborate with BTS for new record. And Kelly Clarkson bags 2 awards in Daytime Emmys segment. And now moving to the top story of the day. Princess Diana was pursued by Oprah Winfrey just like her son and daughter-in-law Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were. However, her sense of humor had saved her from dropping bombshells. Royal historian Robert Lassie claimed in his updated edition of the book Battle of Brothers that the late Princess of Wales had much time for Winfrey. To discuss this, we have entertainment journalist Mohsin Mahmood with us. Mohsin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Mohsin, these latest discoveries about Diana not accepting Oprah's interview offer, of course, dug from the past, seem pretty interesting. What would you say about that?
I think it is pretty interesting in that we're starting to see this story come back again. You know, we're talking about Princess Diana again, and it kind of goes to show that the media is still following on from Princess Diana many years on from her death. And I think that's kind of been one of the most interesting things, and how that kind of coincides with the revelations that came out from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry.
Right, and I would also like to know your take on Lacey's claim that Diana thought Oprah Winfrey is always after sensationalism. Do you agree with this?
I don't agree with that, actually. I don't think Oprah Winfrey was going after sensationalism, but I think this whole story actually opens a can of worms for much deeper questions, and those questions and those fundamental questions surround the role that the media have in the personal lives of public figures. And when we talk about people that are in the public eye, to what extent can journalists and the media interfere in that? You know, only a couple of days ago did the story of Matt Hancock, the former Secretary for Health and Social Care, the affair surrounding that broke out a few days ago and was major news in the media. Obviously, that had quite positive effects in that, you know, it exposed some of the hypocrisy that was going on. And similarly, you'd think that the media, the role of the media is to hold these people accountable. Surely they have a right into the personal lives. But again, with these kind of revelations, it does raise those questions of to what extent does the media have a role in the personal lives of public figures.
Right. And Mohsin, Oprah has already been under fire for the infamous bombshell interview of Meghan and Harry. Do you think that these sort of claims will now keep on coming in the royals' defense?
I think she is being accused of sensationalism and, you know, being branded as someone that's going after the personal lives and trying to bring out these stories. But we mustn't underestimate the fact that Oprah Winfrey was a friend of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. They did give consent and optionally chose to take part in that interview. And the fact that, you know, even according to this headline, she was going there asking for the permission of Princess Diana. So it goes to show that Oprah Winfrey's character is to obviously make sure that the person is comfortable, make sure, and even with the interview, the infamous interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, not everything came out. It was only the things that they were comfortable with. So I think this idea of sensationalism is perhaps arguably something that was coming out of Buckingham Palace and something that's been targeted to attack Oprah Winfrey's character, or maybe it's just kind of dragging on that story, dragging on the story of Princess Diana, but also trying to bring back fire to the story of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry.
Absolutely. And talking about sensationalism, there was this one infamous interview of Diana by Martin Bashir, about which it is claimed that Diana was trapped for that interview. However, she showed her comfort for being interviewed afterwards. But with Oprah, the royal historian says that Diana was afraid and she knew Oprah's about sensationalism. Now, isn't that a contradiction in itself?
It does seem as though it's a contradiction, and it almost, again, like I said, it makes it seem as though they're kind of dragging that story, bringing out something in her character that doesn't seem to align with how Princess Diana was responding to the media at the time. I guess, there is an argument to be made about the way that Martin Bashir handled that and the way that he kind of manipulated her into conducting that interview. But we mustn't obviously take away the fact that it was something that was consented to. Arguably not in the right way, but it was something that she did give permission to being done, and she spoke about these things out of her own will. Now, again, this whole story about Oprah Winfrey, again, it seems as though there's a contradiction of why would Princess Diana say no to her? And according to the report and what's coming out is she was doing some evil tactic of changing the food and ordering kind of fat-based food for her, but free fat for herself. It almost kind of seems as though kind of just painting her in a negative light, and which is quite sad to see, so many years on from her death, that this is still kind of following on from her.
Right. And Oprah Winfrey's style of interviewing is not like traditional journalists, because although she herself is a journalist, but she believes bringing the truth forth. And she asks simple questions, leaving it completely to her guests' comfort without putting any pressure. Apparently, it does not seem that she interviewed people for ratings or for sensationalism. Can we say that it could be Diana's own shy nature that made her afraid of sharing information with Oprah?
I think so. I think perhaps, there's obviously the way that Princess Diana was in that situation and how she was constantly being bombarded by the media. Every time she'd go out, press footages, people taking pictures. It is very intrusive, which is why obviously we have the questions of to what extent does the media play a role in the personal lives of public figures. But, perhaps it is something to do with her shyness. But when we look into Oprah Winfrey's character and the way that she conducts her interviews, as you so rightly mentioned, she does leave it open. She asks simple questions, and she utilizes the platform she has as a friend, first of all, before a journalist. And that's the crucial thing. She's a friend of these people, and therefore she's able to bring out these stories. And that's kind of the beautiful art that she has as a journalist, of being able to connect on a personal level, but also on a journalist level, and bring us these stories that we might not have otherwise got from other journalists.
Right. And in her 25 years of TV host career, there were several times when it was not a scandal-free season for many of her interviews and stories. Besides, she also texted about the Meghan and Harry interview. Coming to that, she texted them before interviewing that the intentions are important. She asked them to be clear in their intentions before the interview and even during the interview. So keeping this in mind, do you think that the interview and the after effects, the impact, it was blown out of proportion? Because every person is free to talk about whatever they feel. It was just an expression of freedom of speech. So do you think that this was blown out of proportion?
I personally think it has been blown out of proportion, but there is obviously two sides of this. The public sentiment is the fact that, this is something that was an honest opinion from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Even the Princess Diana situation, this was an opportunity for both these kind of characters to really speak out about what's happening in Buckingham Palace. Other people are saying that this is something that they're just trying to take advantage of. They're playing the victim card. But it seems a bit odd that the two individuals, Meghan Markle and Princess Diana, experienced very similar things. And so I think, when you have news headlines coming out like this about Oprah Winfrey's, kind of the way that she's been responding and the way that she's been conducting these interviews, it seems as though they're really trying to drag out this story, drag out from the past about Princess Diana and kind of link it at the same time of Meghan Markle. And I think it's quite interesting, the timing of this. It almost comes just at a time where people have kind of gotten over Meghan Markle's story and now trying to bring it back, and it just seems truly like it's being blown out of proportion.
Right. And Mohsin, how much do you believe in the statement where it says that Oprah always wanted to interview the royals? Diana did not agree, so she waited. Oprah, she waited all this time to interview Harry and Meghan.
I think that's the funny bit. I think that's quite ridiculous that she's been waiting this whole time, and it was this yearning moment to finally get a chance with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. I mean, she wouldn't have had any idea during after that after trying to conduct the interview with Princess Anna, she would not have known that Meghan Markle is gonna be with Prince Harry, and that kind of relationship was gonna happen. I mean, it surprised the public that an actress of her level has come over to British public and now has come over to here and had a relationship with Prince Harry, and then they've gone off and are now living their own life in a separate country. To think that she was waiting this whole time for this kind of scenario to play out, it seems ridiculous, and it really does seem as though it's really just trying to paint a picture of Oprah Winfrey, damage her reputation as a journalist, and take away from her credibility and the fact that she's done an incredible job, in my opinion, of kind of utilizing her friendship, but making sure that that isn't tarnished and being affected just because she's a journalist.
True. And Oprah is an example of women empowerment, representation, and speaking for one's own self. So yes, you're absolutely right. Mohsin, it was wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
That was our guest, Mohsin Mahmud. And now moving to other story details of the day. Courtney Love has called out Olivia Rodrigo for her new flower-themed promo photo, hinting at its similarities with Hole's Live Through This album cover. Earlier this week, Rodrigo shared the photo, which sees her cradling a bouquet of flowers with a crown on and mascara streaming down her face to promote her forthcoming album, Sour Prom, live stream event. In a new post on social media, Love shared the photo and wrote, "Spot the difference, #twinning," tagging Olivia Rodrigo as well. No matter what way you look at it, Samuel L. Jackson has had an amazing career. In the 50 years that he's been acting in Hollywood, he has starred in some of the most unforgettable films of all time. Despite securing an unimpeachable legacy as an actor, he has yet to win an Academy Award for any of his performances. Fortunately, that oversight will finally be remedied this year. Lyricist and singer Ed Sheeran recently left fans in a frenzy after announcing plans to star in a musical collaboration for their new record. For those unversed, this isn't Ed Sheeran's first collaboration with the group either. Back in 2019, he penned a song for the group's Map of the Soul Persona album titled Make It Right. TV host and lyricist Kelly Clarkson recently celebrated her success after bagging awards for her outstanding talk show. The news was announced on the Instagram page for Kelly Clarkson Show. For those unversed, the singer managed to beat The Ellen Show for both coveted titles and now has 2 daytime Emmys for both Outstanding Talk Show and Outstanding Host. On the work front, the Daily Mail reports Clarkson is set to take over Ellen DeGeneres' primetime slot starting from 2022. And that is it from the newsroom. We will be right back after a quick short break. Stay tuned to find out more. Welcome back. In this segment, we will review a recent release, Fatherhood. Fatherhood is a movie in which a father brings up his baby girl as a single dad after the unexpected death of his wife, who died a day after their daughter's birth. Kevin Hart's terror is conquering many hearts as the story revolves around a single parent who tries to manage both personal and work life without a partner. To review the movie, we have a critic from BBC Radio, Van Connor, with us. Van, welcome to the show.
A pleasure, Nosheen.
So, Van, not very usual of Kevin Hart. This is probably one of the very first emotional comedy dramas that he played. Normally, he's known as a comedian. So, what do you think of this change? I mean, his character in this movie, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, Kevin Hart's always presented as being quite an astute comedic performer. He's very much into the craft of what he does. And he has taken opportunities over the years here and there, and they've not been his bigger hits, but there have been opportunities for him to spread his wings into more dramatic fare. And I'm thinking, for instance, of 2 or 3 years ago with the remake of Intouchable with Omar Sy. He remade that with Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad. It was called The Upside, I believe, in the English language. And it was, again, an opportunity for him to blend the comedy with the dramatic. And it's something he does a lot here as well.
Yeah. And talking about the rest of the cast, what sort of emotional resonance one feels with the smartly assembled cast?
I thought the cast for this were absolutely terrific. I love that they've got Paul Reiser to play his boss, for instance. And Paul Reiser has always got something of a warming, almost throwback and nostalgic presence coming from the 80s and the films he does. You've got his two friends played by Lil Rel Howley and Anthony Carrigan. Anthony Carrigan's comedic star is rising, and Lil Rel obviously has gone stratospheric in the last few years. And they form an almost quintessentially lovable sort of bro double act for him, a sort of a bedrock and support structure. As well. It's a genuinely well cast film. I think a lot of it though hinges on Kevin Hart himself. It is, like you say, it's a film that allows him to do more with the dramatic, and they've gotten a cast that allows him to walk both lines, and they support him on both the dramatic and the comedic equally.
Right. And of course, this is not a very unique concept. Previously, there had been some movies on the same subject, like Jersey Girl, in which Ben Affleck serves as a single father. But of course, this is a subject that is rarely presented in movies, and that too on this Father's Day. So do you think that the story element was strong enough to complement Father's Day?
I think very much so, and I think like a lot of projects that Kevin Hart has excelled in, it is about taking something that has become, I think, perfunctory in the, dyed-in-the-wool Hollywood since the 80s, almost always aimed at Caucasian audiences, for instance, concepts, usually tired blockbuster formulas, and updating them to appeal to broader audiences, to appeal to more diverse crowds, and something like Fatherhood working as effectively a smarter take on Jersey Girl, a more culturally relevant and a more up-to-date and timely thing, I think will do it wonders. And I think it coming out for Father's Day is, of course, just the cherry on top. It's the perfect release date for it.
Right. And Van, do you expect a sequel coming for this movie? If yes, then what do you expect?
I don't know, unless they get to the empty nest syndrome of when she leaves for college or something. I could see that would potentially be a Kevin Hart-ish sequel down the line, I think.
Right. Also, the way the writer plays with the viewer's emotions is incredible. At many points, the father is full of, self-doubts, but he's powering through, which shows how difficult it is for a man to act both as a father and a mother raising a child all alone.
I think, interestingly as well, because this is an adaptation of the real guy's memoir from 2011. It was a book called Kisses for Maddie by Matthew Loughlin, who, he's still named Matthew Loughlin in the finished film, but this was announced back in 2015 as being a vehicle for Channing Tatum. So there was an entirely different other version of this, and the story seems to still be so strongly held to the original source material that you have to imagine that has been unchanged the whole way, that story and that level of writing, because it is, as you say, a very, very emotional film. There's an almost Pixar up level emotional wallop that has to pretty much start this film, and it is very sharply put down, I think.
Right. And a lot of critics mentioned that it left them with teary eyes, which is not very usual of the critics. Did that happen to you at some point while watching the movie?
I'm a big softie. I'm not gonna lie. I am a big softie. And I'll cry on a lot of things. Like I just mentioned Up a minute ago, and Up will emotionally destroy me. And there are certain films. I mean, I'll shed a tear at Wreck-It Ralph. I'm just a big softie at heart.
Right. The story was not too complicated. There was this one element that made it slightly different. It was not a one-man show. I mean, every character seems to be involved in the process of parenting with Matt. Do you think that makes it different?
I think because I think he does. There are times where the film sort of teeters between different perspectives of, do we go down the "it takes a village" kind of route, or does it have to be, does he have to be the one-man army? And of course, that is his emotional core through it. And of course, the film has to be structured in such a way as to give him that performative support. Not that he needs it, because he's, as I say, tremendous in this. This is, an all-timer for Kevin Hart. I've been watching Kevin Hart on screen for like 17 years offhand. I think I remember Soul Plane in 2004, I think was the first time I ever saw him. But he's always brought a certain emotional heft to it, and that emotional bedrock there. The film makes it about having that community and that support, but also forcing him to question whether or not it's something that's worth him doing alone. It has to be well cast, though, and they do a very good job, I think.
Right, and also Kevin Hart is known for acting through facial expressions rather than, delivering dialogues, which can actually, keep the viewers captivated.
I think it's the eyebrows leaping off the head, his look of shock. I think that's really taken him to the bank the last few years. But Kevin Hart, I think he's known for. I think he's sort of inherited the sort of shriek ability, that comedic shriek performance that I think Chris Tucker had held beforehand. And I think he has. I think it was Chris Rock, then Chris Tucker, and then became Kevin Hart. I think that's the sort of the inheritance of the shrieking performer, and I think that's he seems to have the longest tenure with it of any of them so far.
So Van, what is your take on filmmakers coming towards simpler concepts like movies like Nomadland and Minari, even winning the Oscars? And now that Fatherhood seems to be standing in the same line, so what do you think of this switch from complicated to simpler concepts?
I mean, it has its advantages and its disadvantages like anything. The biggest problem currently facing the film industry is the proliferation of, recognized IP, intellectual property, brands, cinematic universes. Your Fast and Furiouses and your Marvels and your DCs and your Harry Potters and your Legos. There is this shift within the industry towards heavily fixating on that. And there's always been the argument that stifles originality and that they have, in recent years, found something of a home on streaming. We've seen more original concepts coming out through streaming. So filmmakers moving towards streaming and doing the more original concepts seem at the moment to be the more inherently interesting ones. And I don't think it's going to be long before we start seeing more filmmakers like M. Night Shyamalan make that push over there. For instance, he's been in bed with Apple TV in recent months with his series. I think it's called Servant. I've not had the pleasure, but there are other filmmakers of a similar caliber. For instance, I know Spielberg has recently signed a development deal with Netflix that looks set to. I mean, even though that goes back on something the man himself had said several years ago, in which he had dismissed streaming as not being quantifiable film, but it shows you that within a very short space of time, the move for originality and the move to streaming have become quite intertwined.
Right. So coming back to Kevin and Matt, do you think as a fan you would want to see Kevin in more of these characters, or do you think that he should stay the type of comedian he was?
I want Kevin Hart to keep doing exactly what Kevin Hart is doing, because if there's one criticism that you cannot throw at Kevin Hart, which is whether you love Kevin Hart or you loathe him, and I'm aware that there are fellow critics, for instance, who don't particularly enjoy his films. I tend to, more often than not, but I would argue that he varies it up. He knows how to keep pushing the buttons to find something new. And unless it's a direct sequel, which he isn't afraid to do, fair play to him, if you had the ability, he would. He does tend to vary up the kind of films he does. There doesn't seem to be a second equivalent to Think Like a Man, for instance. There doesn't seem to be a second something that's like The Wedding Ringer. He does tend to find variations on his style.
Right. Van, it was indeed a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That was Van Connor with his review on Fatherhood. And that is it from today's episode. We hope you liked it. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media link mentioned down below. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.